I must begin with something that troubles me, something I have spent decades observing in my patients and, if I am honest, in myself. We are most convinced of those things we need to be true, and we call this conviction knowledge. This is the paradox. The beliefs we hold most fiercely, the ones we would defend with our lives, are often the ones doing the most psychological work for us, shoring up some fragile structure within that we cannot afford to see crumble. We do not believe what the evidence suggests. We find evidence for what we already desperately need to believe. And then we call ourselves rational. I should clarify what I mean, because this sounds like cynicism, and I do not wish to be cynical. When I speak of people believing what they want, I am not suggesting we are all liars or fools. I am suggesting something far more uncomfortable, that the psyche has its own logic, its own requirements for survival. And these requirements do not always align with what we call objective truth. The unconscious mind is not concerned with accuracy. It is concerned with balance, with maintaining the structures that keep us functional, that allow us to wake up each morning and face the world without fragmenting entirely. And sometimes, often, this means constructing beliefs that protect us from truths we are not yet strong enough to bear. I have seen this in the consulting room 1,000 times, a man insisting his wife is unfaithful when in fact he is the one consumed by desire for another, a woman certain the world is conspiring against her when what she cannot face is the conspiracy of her own self-sabotage. We call this projection, this seeing in the outer world what we refuse to acknowledge within. But it is more than a mistake or a distortion. It is a necessary fiction, at least until the psyche is ready to integrate what it has split off. Now, one might object, surely not all beliefs are projections. Surely we can know things directly, can test them, can separate what is real from what we wish were real. And yes, of course, in the domain of simple facts, this is often possible. If I drop a stone, it falls. If I place my hand in fire, I am burned. But I am not speaking of these mechanical truths. I am speaking of the beliefs that matter most to us, the ones about meaning, about purpose, about who we are and what our lives signify. These beliefs are never purely rational. They are always doing psychological work. Consider the atheist who insists there is no God, no cosmic meaning, no ultimate purpose. Is he reporting a simple observation, or is he perhaps protecting himself from the terror of accountability, from the weight of a universe that might judge him? Or the believer who clings to scriptures and dogma, is she finding truth, or is she fleeing from the vertigo of a universe without answers, without a father watching over her? I cannot say. Perhaps both are correct in their own way, or perhaps neither has yet reached the honesty to admit what their belief is actually protecting them from. This is not to dismiss either position, only to acknowledge that our most profound convictions are rarely as clean as we pretend they are. The mechanism, as I have come to understand it through years of analytical work, is this: we encounter the world, and the world presents us with information, with experiences, with challenges to our existing understanding. Some of this information is easy to integrate. It fits with what we already believe. It does not threaten the structures we have built to make sense of our lives. But other information is dangerous. It suggests we are not who we thought we were, or that the world is not what we need it to be, or that we have been wrong about something fundamental. And here's where the trouble begins, because the psyche, in its protective wisdom, begins to work. It distorts, it selects, it sees only what can be safely seen. It is like a filter that lets through only the light that will not blind us. But in doing so, it narrows what is possible to perceive. I have watched patients construct elaborate justifications for remaining in destructive relationships, for pursuing careers that clearly torment them, for holding political views that serve only to confirm their existing resentments. And when I point out the contradictions, when I offer evidence that might complicate their narrative, they do not thank me. They become defensive, or confused, or angry, not because they are stupid, but because I am asking them to see something their psyche has deliberately hidden from them, something that threatens the internal balance they have fought so hard to maintain. Perhaps I should be clearer about what I mean by this internal balance, because it sounds abstract, and I risk losing the thread of something urgent here. Every person, whether they know it or not, carries within them what I have come to call the shadow, all the parts of themselves they cannot consciously accept, all the impulses and desires and traits they have had to disown in order to present a coherent face to the world. A man who thinks of himself as good must push all his cruelty into the shadow. A woman who sees herself as strong must deny her vulnerability. A person who believes they are rational must split off their irrationality, their superstitions, their wild and chaotic needs. And these split-off parts do not disappear. They press against consciousness, they leak out in unexpected ways, they demand to be seen even as we refuse to look at them. And one of the most common ways they make themselves known is through belief. We believe things about the world that are really statements about ourselves, statements we cannot yet make directly. If I believe the world is fundamentally hostile, am I describing reality, or am I expressing my own hostility that I cannot admit to? If I believe that success comes only to those who are ruthless, am I observing a law of nature, or am I justifying my own suppressed ruthlessness? These questions make me uneasy, because I cannot always answer them for myself, let alone for others. Now, if this understanding is correct, if belief is often a form of unconscious self-expression rather than simple observation, then it suggests something rather disturbing about the possibility of dialogue, of persuasion, of reasoned debate. Because if you and I disagree about something important, it may not be because one of us has better evidence or clearer logic. It may be because we need different things to be true, because our psyches are doing different work, protecting different wounds, maintaining different internal architectures. When you present me with facts that contradict my beliefs, you are not simply offering me information. You are threatening the structure I have built to keep myself intact. And I will resist, not out of stubbornness or foolishness, but out of something like survival instinct. I wonder sometimes if this explains the profound polarizations I see emerging in the modern world, the way people increasingly inhabit separate realities, unable to hear each other, Perhaps it is not that we lack good arguments or sufficient data, but that we are each defending psychological positions we cannot afford to surrender. I do not know how to solve this, and the question troubles me more as I age. There is another layer to this that I must acknowledge, even though it complicates matters further. It is not simply that we believe what we want because we are protecting ourselves from difficult truths. It is also that belief itself, the act of conviction, serves a profound psychological function. To believe something fiercely is to anchor oneself in a chaotic world, to create a point of stability from which to navigate uncertainty. The person who has no strong beliefs, who remains perpetually open to revision, who sees all sides of every question, such a person may be epistemically virtuous, but they often suffer a kind of paralysis, an inability to act decisively, to commit to a path. We need our beliefs, even when they are partially false, because they allow us to move forward with confidence, to make choices in the absence of complete information. This is perhaps why people become more entrenched in their beliefs when challenged, not only because challenge threatens their internal structure, but because the act of defending belief strengthens conviction, makes the anchor more secure, allows them to feel more solid in a world that constantly threatens to dissolve into uncertainty. I see this as neither good nor bad, simply as part of what it means to be human, to live in time, to have to choose without perfect knowledge. But I must also admit the danger here, because what I am describing can sound like relativism, like the claim that all beliefs are equally valid, or that truth is merely whatever serves our psychological needs. This is not what I mean, and I want to be careful. There is objective reality. Stones do fall, fire does burn, the earth does revolve around the sun, regardless of what anyone believes. My claim is more modest, that in the realm of complex, meaning-laden beliefs, the ones that shape how we live our lives, we are never pure observers. We are always interpreting through the lens of our needs, our fears, our unconscious structures. And this means that even when we are technically correct about something, we may be correct for the wrong reasons, or holding a truth in a way that distorts it, or using it to avoid some other truths we cannot face. The work of individuation, of becoming more whole, is not about achieving perfect objectivity. I do not believe such a thing is possible for humans. It is about becoming aware of what our beliefs are doing for us, what psychological work they are performing, so that we can choose more consciously whether to hold them or release them. This is a different kind of honesty than we usually discuss, and it is far more difficult because it requires us to turn our attention not outward to the world, but inward to the machinery of our own psyche. I have come to think that the people most confident in their beliefs are often those who have examined them least, and this includes myself when I am being lazy or defensive. It is easier to be certain when you have not looked closely at the foundations, when you have not asked yourself what needs are being met by this particular configuration of convictions. And yet the person who examines too much, who questions everything, who refuses to commit to any stable position, this person also pays a price, the price of perpetual doubt, of inability to act, of a kind of intellectual vertigo that makes life feel unmoored and meaningless. So we are caught between two failures, the failure of blind certainty and the failure of paralytic skepticism. Perhaps wisdom, if there is such a thing, lies somewhere in the middle, holding our beliefs lightly enough that we can revise them when necessary, but firmly enough that we can live by them, can use them as guides for action. But I confess I do not always achieve this balance myself, and I suspect most people do not either. Let me return to the question I began with, the paradox that has haunted my work. We are most convinced of what we need to be true, and we call this knowledge. If this is accurate, and decades of clinical observation suggest to me that it is, then what follows? It suggests, first, that much of what passes for rational debate is actually psychological theater, people defending positions that serve unconscious needs they cannot articulate even to themselves. It suggests that facts and evidence, while important, are rarely sufficient to change deeply held beliefs, because those beliefs are not held for factual reasons. It suggests that the work of changing our minds, of genuinely updating our understanding, requires not just new information, but psychological transformation, a willingness to face what we have been avoiding, to integrate what we have split off, to allow our internal structures to reorganize, even when this is frightening and destabilizing. And it suggests, perhaps most disturbingly, that there may be truths we are constitutionally unable to see, because seeing them would require us to be different people than we are, to have different needs, to carry different wounds. I cannot prove any of this. It is observation, interpretation, extrapolation from what I have witnessed in the depths of therapeutic work. But it has the feeling of something important, something that explains much about why we struggle so greatly to understand each other, to change each other's minds, to agree on what is real. So I am left with a question, one I cannot fully answer, but which seems essential. If we cannot separate our beliefs from our needs, if every conviction serves some psychological function we may not be aware of, then what can we trust? How do we move forward? How do we tell the difference between a belief we hold because it is true and a belief we hold because we need it to be true? Is there even a difference?